Okay, everyone, I think we'll make a start. And I'm just going to state at the outset that the acoustics are not good in this room. We've had some issues, so I would encourage everyone to come to the front of the seating if you can, just because it'll make it a bit easier. And for those of you who will be speaking tonight, please talk into the mic and talk loud and clearly, but I've just flagged that at the outset. So thanks, everyone. This will hopefully be the last PDC meeting for the year. I don't think there's any other planned and we don't want one, but let's make a start. So firstly, just the acknowledgement of country. So Yarra City Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people as the traditional owners and true sovereigns of the land now known as Yarra. We acknowledge their creator spirit, Bunjil, their ancestors and their elders. We acknowledge the true strength and resilience of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and who have never ceded sovereignty and retained their strong connections to family, clan and country despite the impacts of European invasion. We also acknowledge the significant contributions made by other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to life in Yarra. We pay our respects to elders from all nations here today and to their elders past, present and future. So just firstly, starting off with the attendance tonight, we have Councillor Sharon Harrison and Deputy Mayor. We have Councillor Evangeline Aston, Councillor Edward Crossland, Councillor Andrew Davies, Councillor Kenneth Gomez, Councillor Mecca Ho and Councillor Sophie Wade. We've received apologies from Mayor and Councillor Stephen Jolly and Councillor Sarah McKenzie. Okay, so the declarations of conflict of interest. Councillors, I will now ask each of you to make a conflict of interest declaration. You may respond with "I do" to the following question. Do you declare you have familiarised yourselves?
I do.
Councillor Kenneth Gomez?
I do.
Councillor Mecca Ho?
I do.
Councillor Sophie Wade?
I do.
And I do. So moving on, confirmation of minutes. That I have a motion that the minutes of the Planning Decisions Committee held on Tuesday, 25 November 2025 be confirmed. I will now ask for a mover and seconder. Okay, so I will now call for a vote. So Councillor Crossland and Councillor Gomez. I will now call for a vote. All in favour? Thank you. That's passed unanimously. Okay, so the committee business reports. We now move to committee business reports, which will provide an opportunity for members of the public to address the committee. I will invite everyone who is registered to address the committee in order of registration. When your turn comes, please switch on your microphone and state your full name and suburb you live in for the record. If you are speaking on behalf of a group, please explain the nature of the group and how you were able to speak on their behalf. We then ask that you direct your statement to me, confine your submission to the subject under consideration, avoid repeating previous submitters, don't ask questions or seek comments from councillors or others. You will have 5 minutes to address the committee, but you don't have to use all of that time. I will let you know when you're nearing the end of the 5 minutes. Okay, so the first item on the agenda tonight is 5.1, planning application for 20 Coate Avenue, Alphington. So, councillors, do you wish for a brief report from officers? Yes? Okay.
Through you, Chair. This is an application for 20 Coate Avenue, which is for the construction of 11 townhouses. There's a Clause 55 assessment. The land is zoned Neighbourhood Residential 3. There is a part of the land, it is in a special building overlay, and there is a development contribution overlay on the land. The report sets out a number of comments that have been received from the referrals and recommends approval subject to conditions, including some conditions required by Melbourne Water as recommending authorising referral. The only reduction in the car parking is for 2 visitor car parking spaces, and there are a number of controls about the tree protection and about some overlooking and regarding the new vehicle crossovers, but I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
So do councillors have any questions at this stage? No? Okay. Maybe then we can have the applicant represented by Sue Zhang Planning Solutions.
Good evening, councillors and Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this agenda item. As you've heard from the council officer, this is an application for 11 townhouses. And if you have had the opportunity to review the delegate report, you'll see that this is a very rare opportunity within this part of Alphington to achieve a meaningful infill residential development. The site is very regularly sized. It's a rectangular shape. It's in excess of 2,600 square metres. So what that means is we're able to accommodate a variety of dwelling topology. So it includes 5 4-bedroom townhouses, 5 3-bedroom townhouses and 1 2-bedroom townhouse, all residential for the residents. The car parking will be provided on site. Given the significant size of the land, we're also able to accommodate all unreasonable off-site amenity impact and resolve that within the title boundaries itself. You'll be no doubt be familiar with the recent changes of the type of development outcome that can be achieved on a block. What it does is it sets a preferred maximum building height, building site coverage. It sets out siting requirements in terms of its front, side and rear setbacks. And what that does is it manages off-site amenity impacts such as visual bulk, overlooking, as well as overshadowing of existing secluded private open spaces. This proposal complies with each one of those standards. With the car parking that's provided, as I mentioned earlier, all the statutory requirements will be met on site. What we're seeking to reduce is 2 visitor car parking spaces. Internally, all the driveways, all the car parking spaces have been checked by our traffic engineers. Swept path analysis has been prepared and submitted to council officers for review and assessment. Council's engineers have reviewed and confirmed that it has been designed appropriately. In terms of the extent of car parking reduction that we're seeking, it is a very low number at 2 visitor spaces only. Again, our traffic engineer and council's traffic engineer independently have undertaken an assessment and has confirmed that the proposal is worthy of support from a traffic engineering perspective. In terms of landscaping outcomes, we are of the view that the standard is met, but this is a very new standard within the community, within the industry. There's a number of different interpretations of how the compliance is achieved. What is not in dispute here is the extensive amount of planting that is proposed. Throughout the site, we are providing 24 canopy trees within the front, rear and throughout the site itself. Council has imposed and suggested a number of conditions to clarify the level of compliance. My instructions are that we will not be contesting those conditions. We want to work with council and we want to achieve a really good landscape outcome for the community. There are 2 street trees. We will be retaining them. We will be protecting them. There are proposed conditions to construct a footpath around the structural root zones of those trees and adopting sensitive construction methodologies within the TPZ and also the structural root zones of those trees. And my client has every intention of complying with those conditions. Lastly, yes, the site at the rear, a small part of the site at the rear is affected by a special building overlay. Melbourne Water is the determining authority in this instance. They have reviewed the proposal. They have made a number of recommendations in terms of the structures within land affected by the SBO. They form part of the recommended conditions. We do not intend to contest them. They can be readily met. I do understand that in future there may be some changes to the planning controls with respect to flooding, but that is still in its infancy. It needs to go through a number of assessment processes. So what is before you, councillors, is the controls as they currently exist, and Melbourne Water has considered and does not object to the approval. I understand my time is up. Thank you very much for your time. I am here should there be any questions later on tonight.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions at this point? No?
I do.
Okay.
Just to make it absolutely clear, because we're dealing with the changes in the treatment of the new Melbourne flood maps, you are accepting the conditions that Melbourne Water have imposed upon the... Thank you.
Okay, so the first registered speaker for this item is Tim Nikolski. Tim, are you in the audience? Okay, no. The second registered speaker is Anne Boyapati. Come forward. Okay, so you have 5 minutes. You've got the mic on, so go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Anne Boyapati. I reside in Alphington. Good evening, councillors and Madam Chair, and thank you for the relates to the upper levels of townhouses 10 and 11, which directly overlook our children's bedrooms and a bathroom. This issue also affects our neighbours at 2 Tower Avenue. We understand that there has been a recent amendment to Clause 55 of the Res Code, which now classifies bedrooms as non-habitable spaces and therefore does not require privacy screening. However, we believe that this interpretation does not reflect the reality of how bedrooms are used, particularly for children and teenagers. A bedroom is not just a place to sleep. It's a space where young people study, play, and enjoy personal privacy. Direct overlooking into these rooms raises significant concerns for us as parents and as neighbours. We respectfully request that Council require the bedroom windows of the proposed townhouses to include obscured glazing. This is a simple and practical solution that would protect the privacy of both our property and the future residents of the new development. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Sorry, councillors, do you have any questions of officers?
Yes, I do. I was just wondering if, in the first instance, officers could address that question that was just raised about overlooking from the second story.
Through you, Chair. I think the objector very clearly summed up what we are bound by. With the changes, the bedrooms cannot be screened. It's only living areas that can be screened.
On a completely different matter, I note that this application has 3 crossovers that arguably aren't needed. They're kind of new curb cuts on Coates Street, which effectively means the removal of 3 car parks on Coates Street, and also limits it makes the pedestrian experience on Coates Street worse, like walking down the footpath when you've got more people crossing over. Can you speak to the council's policy around adding crossovers when theoretically a joint driveway could have been used, like it has been for the back of the properties?
Through you, Chair. The application that we have in front of us does have those vehicle crossovers. I understand that there are a number of developments within the broader area that do have a central driveway that goes into the development and then provides access to the other developments. That's not what we're assessing today. While that might be seen to be a preferred option, we need to assess what's in front of us, and that is not to have just the one vehicle crossover. Any changes on that scale would be a complete redesign. Thank you.
Sorry, one more from me. That's useful, thank you. Is there anything in the planning scheme that would encourage an applicant to not have additional crossovers? Just that's more a future question than a now question.
Through you, Chair, I think the only way that you could, if the question is, are you asking if there is a way to limit that in the future, you would need to look at some sort of overlay that would say that in this area we are discouraging driveways within frontages of such and such. So there'd need to be some sort of study to underpin whatever overlay you'd be looking to do.
Just a question to the officers. So the objection raised about the previous objector about the overlooking aspect.
As a condition, however, the applicant may be agreeable if that was a way forward.
Could I ask the applicant at some stage during the evening whether they would be amenable to that screening?
Do we have any further questions from the officers? Any further questions of the officers? No? Okay, so councillors, I'm now looking for a way forward.
Yes, I'm happy to move the one that was circulated under Councillor Crossland's name that is effectively accepting the officer recommendation but adding one at-grade bicycle parking space to be accommodated per dwelling.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Yep. So let's put the motion then.
Yes, so you're happy for me to speak to it?
Yes.
Great. Thank you to our 2 submitters on this item tonight, and Ms Boyer-Party, I'm sorry that the planning scheme has so recently changed in this way. I certainly can sympathise with your commentary. I grew up just outside of Alphington. It's a lovely area. I'm personally really glad to see that there's going to be more people living in that area, more neighbours making bonds. It's a wonderful place to be. The questions that I asked for the benefit of anybody listening about the crossovers is about how the more of these kind of curb cuts we have on the street, it makes it harder for people in wheelchairs, it makes it harder for pedestrians, there's kind of cars backing into the road all the time. I was particularly concerned in the application to see that in the renders of the Coate Avenue frontage, the crossovers weren't actually shown, so it looked a lot nicer and greener and less car-centric than I think it really is, and it also kind of didn't visualise to people that they would be losing that, not only are there no additional visitor parking being put on site, which I think is fine, but also the street is losing parking through this application. So in future, I think designing the way that the neighbours on this street have designed, which is to use one communal driveway so that we're not cutting into the curb, we're not cutting into the footpath, we're not cutting into the nature strip, would be preferable to the extent that the applicant can take that on board. And I would certainly advise in any future materials, including potentially advertising, to make sure that those curb cuts are shown in any renders. It just doesn't give a great vibe to leave them out, even though it does look nicer. But as a general proposition, yeah, thank you for coming today, Ms. Boyapati, and I hope you know, you get good neighbours and it all works out okay. So thank you.
Oh, Councillor Costin, did you also want to speak?
Yes, thank you. And again, thank you to everyone that's come here to speak to this item tonight. Yeah, the crossover thing was something that really caught my eye. As Councillor Wade has just touched on, we're a bit stuck here. So my preference would have been to put a condition in there that all vehicular access has to be off the shared drive to bring it into alignment with other developments that have occurred in the area. However, that would require a redesign, which then would mean a refusal. I don't want to refuse a housing development on that basis, but I think it gives food for thought for myself and councillor colleagues around the curbside work that we're currently starting and how we can look to address this kind of scenario in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to speak? Let's put the motion then. All those in favour of the amended motion? Yep. It's unanimous. So thank you to everyone who's come here for that item. Yes, so we'll just go through the way forward with that. So could officers come to the front and explain what the next steps are?
Thank you, Chair. A notice of decision will be issued and a copy of that will be sent to all objectors.
Thank you. Okay, so the second item on the agenda tonight is the planning application for 433 Smith Street, Fitzroy North. Okay, so councillors, firstly I'll invite the, I don't think we have a representative of the applicant here tonight, is that correct? Okay, so we can move straight on then to the submitters, and the first person who's registered is Virginia Noonan. Is Virginia here tonight? Ah, perfect. Come forward. Thanks, Virginia. So you've got 5 minutes to address. Excellent. Okay, I'll let you.
Looking for my quick note that I made, but finding it a little difficult. It's in relation to the street name of one, and it's where it's spelled B-O-R-A-T, Barat, in the complex. And I presume it's supposed to be after the Indigenous person Barak, B-A-R-A-K. Very famous Indigenous Wurundjeri person. And I just sort of pull that, that's literally all I want to say, I'll just pull that up as a point that I think needs to be rectified.
Thank you, Virginia. So the second registered speaker we have tonight is Simon Evans. Is Simon here? Yes. Perfect.
My name is Simon Evans and I'm a resident of North Fitzroy. I'm not going to go back too much into the past, but there were certain events that occurred with regard to the gasworks site. In 2019, there was a panel that was created for the disposal of that site. At that time, there was a great deal of community involvement, There was a great deal of ministerial involvement in coming up with an approach to that site which respected the involvement of Yarra, the council, the residents, and very much Development Victoria's attitude to getting an appropriate outcome on there. Subsequent to that, there was a great deal of work done on the Queen's Parade area, where there was interim controls and there were permanent controls. Through that period, the majority of those controls were based upon 10-storey maximum height, some mandatory, some preferred. And it was, again, working with the planners of government, planning appeals, sorry, not planning, the planning board, and also, again, with the City of Yarra. It was something which then led to the adoption of 10 stories to the gasworks site, and that was one of the minister's great sort of parting gestures, was really the planning controls as a development plan overlay in that particular area. And encompassed with that was setbacks, because part of the ongoing discussion all the way through the preceding 3 to 4 years was on the appropriate height and appropriate setbacks, because that was part of what was encompassed within the Queen's Parade controls, which became known as DDO 16. So it was with some bother that we only found out about this, and I'm not going over old ground, with the agenda being created, because in the past there's been community consultative committees. This is where Development Victoria would come to the residents and tell them what was going on. Those meetings haven't been held. They haven't been consulted. They haven't been engaged with. They haven't been told of those particular procedures. So we hear, then sitting in front of us, a planning permit via a fast-track process, which now talks about 15 stories. We're talking about 14 stories. We're talking about 12s. In Area B and C, 2 of the 9 buildings proposed are the only ones, very block-like structures that have been created there. And this is where I sort of now go to the council officer's report. I was very pleased to see the quality of that report. That report clinically went through that, itemised all of those concerns, where they looked at, the planning controls, the DPO as a SAT, and they analysed every building. They looked at the open space that was there, and they assessed it against the approved development plan. We'd been packaged up with a development plan. We'd seen perspectives. We'd seen perspectives that probably cost tens of thousands of dollars in the initial development plan approval. We were comfortable with it. If Development Victoria and its developers and the superannuation funds backing those developers had have complied with the development plan overlay and had really say, we work within this area, we wouldn't be here. We know that that's something that is engaged and managed by the council. Yet, the residents are now excluded, no consultative committee. If this was a normal development plan approval process, if there was a planning permit had been allowed, we'd be having part of this discussion. Council would be part of this discussion. So we are, I would say as a community, and there's a bit of a groundswell occurring on this. You know, I don't think the community will be daunted. We weren't daunted with the pool. We weren't daunted with Queen's Parade. We weren't daunted with other things. There's other avenues that we think. But for me, I compliment the council officer and I compliment the council. And what we've got to do is work out how the council and the residents can go forward on both a political and a media process to try and get a much better outcome than what has been proposed. The rug has been pulled out from beneath our feet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so our third speaker on this item is Rachel Verstegen. Is Rachel here? Perfect.
Is it on? The one on the left. Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I'd like to thank Councillor Gomez for making me aware of the plans for the gasworks site. I'd actually like to, I'm a cyclist. I ride my bike everywhere, so I am very pro-cyclist. I'm actually very pro-development, as we have to fit in all these people who are coming to Melbourne. They have to live somewhere. And Clifton Hill, North Fitzroy, it's a great place to live, lots of amenities, all that stuff. Now, I want to address parking, that's it. Now, if this had been put to me maybe 15 years ago, a development, because there is, just checking my notes here, there's 1,052 apartments. Let's say it's likely to house 2,000 people. This is in just parcel C and B. That's 0.72 car spots per apartment. It sounds fabulous. We're going to live in this idealistic bicycle utopia where everyone gets around on their cargo bikes, normal bikes, electric bikes, the whole thing. However, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the experience of residents in Brunswick, where the Nightingale apartments have been built and which they don't have parking. And as a result, the people might start off without a car, but life changes, you have children, you have to visit relatives out in the burbs, you get knocked off your bike, and you have a good rethink of if car life is really possible. So what I would like to... So while it's great to encourage people to ride bikes, I think it's the lived experience, and it's been proven in Brunswick, it doesn't happen. And what will happen is, I live in Hodgkinson Street, I don't think I made that clear, which is opposite Gasworks site, and I'm one of those fortunate people who actually do have off-street parking. However, we frequently park on the street, and some will get a car, and then they'll have to park somewhere, and guess what? They'll park in the first available spot that doesn't have restrictions on it. And sometimes they'll park in Hodgkinson Street, Cancel Street, all in North Fitzroy where Councillor Gomez lives. So I'm just and I agree the height is, that's another whole issue, but let's not go there. Let's just stick to this. So I'm requesting, the other thing is, I'm requesting 1 car spot per apartment for the buildings in B and C, and I'm also requesting, and I haven't looked at all the plans, it does need visitor parking. I'm not across the details of how much visitor parking there is, but for people who go visit friends who live in apartments, particularly in Docklands, you cannot park anywhere. It's actually a bit of a nightmare. So I want me, and I'm sure many of my fellow residents will agree with me, 1 car spot per apartment and some visitor spots. Yes, we can. I am aware it costs more to put in, apparently it's approximately $70,000 per car park. It will add to the cost of each apartment. Well, I can tell you, I could give you a list of 100 ways to reduce the cost of building, and which would save $70,000, but that's conversation for another day. And yes, so that's all I'd like to say. So thank you for listening, and I'll be honest, I'm more hopeful than positive that this will result in just 1 car spot per apartment. And look, I've done the whole no car life several times, okay? I only got a car 6 months ago. So I am very, I ride everywhere, as Councillor Gomez knows. So I'm not anti-cyclist. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so councillors, do you wish for a brief report from officers?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, through you, Chair. This report provides Council with an assessment of a planning application to be considered by the Department of Transport and Planning for a planning permit for parcels B and C located in the broader eastern portion of the former Fitzroy Gasworks site. Collectively, each application seeks approval for a mixed-use development comprising residential and commercial uses. The construction includes a suite of buildings across parcels B and C and a reduction in the car parking requirement. The department is seeking Council's comments in relation to the application and is subject to a review against the Fitzroy Gasworks development plan for this site, which was endorsed by the Minister for Planning back in 2022. The officer's report outlines a number of key issues and departures from the development plan, and they're outlined and itemised within the officer recommendation. It also provides a suite of conditions to the department should the department be of the mind to issue a planning permit. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, do councillors have any questions? Councillor Go.
So just to make, John, thank you for that. Just to make it clear for the people listening or in the audience, so this decision about what's going to be built on site, including the parking requirement, that's a decision going to be made by the planning minister, not by us as the responsible authority. I just want to make it absolutely clear for people listening to this. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I guess the obvious question is, can we make any suggestions about how to address some of the parking shortfall that our residents have talked about?
The application is it's simply seeking a reduction. It's just not to offer up any additional car parking would simply exacerbate the traffic that would result in additional traffic implications. And they've been seriously scrutinised by the engineers that prepared the traffic reports, such as Traffic's Group.
So just foreshadowing something for an alternate motion coming up. So one of the questions I had was that it looks like the maximum height for some of the buildings, especially down on the boundary with Alexandra Parade, is quite higher than what was sort of discussed, that Simon mentioned in the DPO or the development plan. Do you understand why they perhaps have done that? Is it because they've tried to avoid overshadowing issues or bulk and other aspects, massing aspects, and the rest of the design?
Through you, Chair. My understanding of the plans would be that the greater yield is being offered up against the Alexandra Parade interface because it's a larger arterial road where there's greater scope and opportunity to provide greater yield compared to the other interfaces being Smith Street and Queen's Parade. That said, the development plan does allude to a 10-storey development with the 5-storey podium. It also offers up some shadow diagrams that have previously been scrutinised and have formed part of the development plan, which has been endorsed by the Minister. Thank you.
Just foreshadowing something for later. So if we were to endorse the officer's recommendation to bring the overall height back into line with the DPO, the government is able to do a redesign of some sort to make sure that those changes that we put in won't impact what I call the residential yield, the 1,000-odd apartments that we would be hoping to bring into the community to address the housing crisis.
Through you, Chair, I do agree in the sense that there is an opportunity within the site to maintain the yield that's currently being offered and spread that across throughout the remainder of the site. Yes.
Okay, Councillor Wade.
Could I ask a follow-up question about that, and if you could just explain it a little bit more, because it certainly sounds good to me, but obviously 4 stories worth of apartments over multiple buildings needs to go somewhere. Does it mean that apartments would get smaller, or how could it be accommodated?
Across the site, there's a spread of building height, it's not consistently 14 stories across both parcels. There are heights that range between 7 and 8 stories and then feed up to 9, 10 stories. So there is an opportunity within the scheme itself increase the height in order to provide additional.
Thank you, that's very helpful. And this is probably a subjective question, but I guess everything in planning is somewhat subjective. If that were done, like, for example, it was just kind of flat 10 stories across, what would officers' view be on that?
Through you, Chair. Again, that's already been scrutinised and it actually forms part of the development plan. There is a building envelope that's been endorsed at 10 stories within the development plan that does provide that particular concept across the site.
More questions? Okay, so I'm looking for a way forward.
I think I had an alternate motion sent around earlier.
So we have two alternate motions here. So the motion that's been brought by Councillor Gomez and a second alternate motion from Councillor Crossan. Can I ask you, Councillor Gomez, the amendments in the second, the Councillor Crossan's motion, are you amenable to those being added to yours? Or?
I am.
Okay. So do we have a, perhaps you can speak to, yep. Okay. So a seconder? Okay, perfect. Yes.
I'm very sorry to do this. I have one more question for officers, but I'm happy for them to take it from over there if they've got mics. I did want to just ask about the Borat Street naming and if we had any more information about that, because if it is Uncle William Barak, brilliant, but it's not explained.
Through you, Chair. It's uncertain and unclear whether it's in fact.
Gomez, do you want to describe what's in your motion?
Yes, so you just asked me to describe what I'm proposing? Yeah. So essentially it's to address it's to accept the officer recommendation, essentially, but to add to it. One is to seek clarity on the Borat Street naming, whether it's an error or whether it's deliberate. I think we just need to ask that question. And as foreshadowed in my questions, I'm asking the officers, I'm supporting the officers that we try and encourage the planning minister to tweak the design so that we can bring it back within the development plan overlay or the development plan, but not lose the 1,052 dwellings that have been proposed in this plan originally. If I could add to
Through
that.
you, Chair, can I just clarify? Councillor Gomez, are you moving a mash-up of the two amended motions as one?
I'm in the hands of governance. I'm not opposed to the amendment, so I'm happy to do either.
So one way forward would be for you to move both and they read together and then Councillor Crossan potentially could second?
I think that was my understanding of what had happened, was that Councillor Gomez said he was happy to just move both, but...
So you're happy to have a merged motion and Councillor Crossan, you're happy to second that? Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, Councillor Gomez, do you want to... sorry.
Sorry, I had a question, which is maybe it might be worth putting up on screen the additional changes, because I think we're only seeing the ones that Councillor Gomez initially moved. And that's happened now.
So, Councillor Gomez, would you like to speak to the motion that you've... and Councillor Crossan will be able to speak to what he's done as well.
Well, I'll repeat what I said before, which is the officers have done an extraordinary amount of work to assess a very complicated design. Many buildings being built in parcels B and C, and a lot of history around what the community and I guess the state government or the planning minister of the day put together as a way to address some of the housing crisis that we foreshadowed, as well as bringing a lot of community facilities to the area. The community worked very hard, and I was one of them at the time, to try and ask for housing, ask for school, ask for sporting and recreation facilities, got all that. So we're just asking, in the spirit of what's been happening to date, to continue that work and to deliver the development in line with what was agreed, and that's the development plan overlay. In terms of the additional stuff I asked for, it's just to clarify on the naming of Borat Street, and like I said before, making sure any changes do not impact or don't reduce, sorry, the residential yield that we're expecting from this original development. That's all I'm going to say.
Councillor Crossland, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, thank you. So thank you, Councillor Gomez, for accepting the amendments. I think together they provide a strong and robust position to take to the department. Very quickly summarising what I've put forward here, it includes internal stairwells with exterior boundaries having external glazing, and also making them unenclosed to common areas, so there's no walls or doors to common areas where possible. So it's a more inviting environment. It builds on SEPTED principles. It makes it more likely people will actually use stairs to make sure that we're meeting the provision of 2 allocated bicycle parking spaces per dwelling, including having provision for cargo bikes and bikes with trailers. There's several adjustments regarding ground floor setbacks and relocation of some of the bicycle parking to be these resolutions, and also including detail in the way in which affordability would be calculated and confirmation that affordable dwellings are affordable to very low and low income earners, providing things in perpetuity, including the social housing dwellings, because that was one of the things that was very clear and fought for as part of the development plan overlay. Thank you.
Okay, did anyone else want to speak to this?
Thank you. I think I'll start by just saying that I think Mr. Evans probably put it well in that it's not quite we were promised an exemplar site. It was one that had a lot of community involvement in getting to a certain point, and I don't think an exemplar site is what we've been given. I'm particularly concerned about the open space in the middle of the site, which just doesn't seem to be, I think, what was initially envisaged and what is going to be home to 2,000 plus people. And also, it's got a school right there. More open space would have been better. I would like to echo the comments of Councillor Gomez and Councillor Crossland in thanking officers for their diligence in picking through a quite complicated set of plans, and particularly in circumstances where we're not the decision maker. That's a challenging thing for staff, I'm sure, to be able to find time to do. And they've done a very good job of critiquing what's in front of us, but also finding a way through to say that we still want to fit all these people in. We want these people in our community. And so I think that's a good place to land. I also just wanted to say that, and this is obvious to everybody, we're in a housing crisis, and in particular, we're in a public housing crisis. This was publicly owned land. It was decontaminated at vast expense. It would have been a really good place to put public housing, and that's one of the items that was in the hybrid motion in the end, is just expressing disappointment that there's no public housing in the final plans, particularly in circumstances where the housing crisis has worsened since those conversations with our community were had all those years ago in 2019 and onwards. But also with the announcements of the demolition of the housing towers, it's particularly kind of boggling, I guess, that we had this land right there where we were happy to see more public and social housing, and it seemed like a perfect opportunity to use it, and no public housing has been included at all. That said, there is a higher yield of social and affordable housing that I think for a while we were expecting, so that bit is definitely a positive. There's pros and cons to this. I do thank community members who have fought really hard for this land to include that public, social and affordable housing. I think we've got a community who, you know, is saying, hey, we know public and social housing work here. We know the mix of community works here. We want people of diverse backgrounds, of varied socioeconomic levels to live in this community. And I'm really pleased that we had a community who fought for those outcomes. It doesn't look quite how we originally envisaged. I'm still sad that it's not a higher percentage of public and social housing, but in particular public housing. But at least there will be a lot of people housed, and that is certainly a positive thing. So after that mixed bag of comments, I will I will commend this motion to my colleagues.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak to this? No. Look, I'll just say one small thing. I want to acknowledge the community members who have been fighting for this for a long time, and the fact that Councillor Gomez has brought this amendment forward to push for that yield to be honoured, and I hope that we can, you know, achieve that, because I'm just acknowledging the fact that there was so much work done by the community to get the development plan, and I'd like to see that carried out in good faith, so we'll see what happens. Okay, so I guess it is time to put the motion. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Okay, thank you. So officers, can we now hear the way forward with this application?
Through you, Chair. A letter will be forwarded on to the department outlining council's concerns and relaying the conditions as set out in the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so then it looks like we do not have an applicant or any registered speakers for this particular application. Okay, so I think that's a product of the fact that this is has only just been on notice and few people know about it. So I'll just note that in the beginning. So I guess the next step then is, councillors, do you wish for a brief report from the officers?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Through you, Chair. Council has been approached by the Department of Transport and Planning to consider an amendment to the Yarra planning scheme via 96A of the Planning and Environment Act, which seeks to progress draft amendment C333 Yarra, which seeks to rezone the rear portion of the land at 549 to 555 Church Street, which is the part sort of fronting Brighton Street. There is a concurrent planning application that's also relevant to this amendment, which is to, redevelop the land as a 9-storey office development with some restricted retail. I think my colleague will talk a bit more to the planning permit side of things.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So the development proposal for this application is to construct a 9-storey mixed-use office and restricted retail use. It also seeks a reduction in the car parking requirements as well. Officers have undertaken an assessment and done a number of referrals. Those comments have been provided in the report. Officers have recommended that the proposal be supported, subject to a suite of conditions in the recommendation. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so do we have questions? Councillor Aston.
With the recommendations that you're making, will that essentially bring the proposed development sort of into compliance with the DDO?
Through you, Chair. The DDO has 3 components to it. It basically breaks up the site into 3 parts: the part fronting Church Street, the central portion, and the rear portion fronting Brighton Street. At the moment, as the proposal stands, it generally complies with it complies with the Church Street component. The central portion is where it's higher than what the DDO anticipates. Officers have recommended a deletion of one level. Through that, it will bring the building down. However, it will still slightly be higher than what the maximum height that's suggested under the DDO. However, in addition to that, officers have recommended for increased setbacks, which would then ameliorate the slightly increase in height that's allowed under the DDO.
So Gomez.
Just for clarification, so the DDO, I guess, assumes 8 stories, for want of a better term. One less than what's proposed by the applicant.
Through you, Chair. The middle portion, which is 28 metres, is, I think we kind of assume 7 stories.
7 stories, okay. I was just a little bit surprised the interface to those residential places on Cotter Street seems very stark. That, you know, you've got a cliff face of X stories overlooking someone's private open space.
Through you, Chair. So the rationale, I guess, for the sort of height difference, so the portion which is being rezoned has a lower height of 12 metres, which is very similar to what the current residential zone is. Now, even though with Cotter Street there are some residential properties there, they are zoned commercial too, so they're not actually under the residential zone. So the way that the planning scheme kind of deals with those sort of interfaces, I guess they have a slightly lower amenity expectations. We do see this quite throughout Yarra, where there's many residential properties within commercial industrial zones. They can continue if they have existing use rights. They can also, you see medical suites, for example, within older residential buildings. Again, we've kind of introduced sort of building separation controls, which is, I believe we're proposing that sort of 4.5 metre setback above for the upper levels. But then again,
protruding out in the designs. It's almost like a brick veneer box. Can you talk to how that sits within the heritage framework of Cotter Street? Because it seems to sit quite outside of what the face of a Richmond street is, understanding that is commercial too.
Through you, Chair, I understand that section you're referring to is 3 Cotter Street. That's actually a single-storey substation that's been proposed there. So the application was referred to Council's Heritage Advisor. He's reviewed the proposal, is generally supportive of the proposal, however, has made some recommendations to improve the presentation. So that's a change in the materials, a variation to what is perceived as an opening to the Cotter Street facade. So with those minute changes, the proposal was considered acceptable from a heritage perspective in Cotter Street.
Any further questions? Yes.
Thank you. Just wanting confirmation, there's an existing red brick building that appears to be retained. Can you confirm that that shell effectively is being retained, hence why there is that kind of abrupt red brick wall to the rear of the properties on Cotter Street?
That's correct.
Councillor Davey.
In terms of car parking, can you just talk to what the figures are under the scheme and what the reduction is, please?
Through you, Chair, the planning scheme requires 503 car parking spaces to be provided for the uses that's proposed on site. The proposal provides 54 on-site parking, so there is a reduction of 449 spaces being sought by the applicant.
Just to follow on, is there, from a planning point of view, has it been considered where those other 450 car spaces will go, if not on residential streets?
Similar to any developments within the City of Yarra, car parking reduction is not uncommon, given that the location is highly accessible to public transport, and given the limited number of parking spaces in the surrounding streets, the expectation is that staff or anyone who operates from that building in the future will have to seek alternative modes of transport, whether it be through cycling, walking or catching public transport.
Councillor Gomez.
So just moving on to the rezoning aspect of this application. So we're being asked to consider both the rezoning of a GRZ to a CZ as well as what could be built on that, correct? Is that typical or normal?
Through you, Chair. No, it's not typical. Partly why I guess it's going through that 96A of the Act is because they need the rezoning to occur for the office of development to go ahead. I think currently under the general residential zone, office is prohibited. Currently, as it stands, the land is being used as a warehouse on the entire site. So when we were preparing the Cremorne UDF, we kind of had a look at existing land uses, and if we were aware of any sort of properties with dual zoning, this was the sort of avenue in which to sort of rectify it. Because the landowner has approached state government in regards to a proposed development, they also require this amendment to occur for them to go ahead.
Okay, Councillor Gomez and then Councillor Dave.
I'm having flashbacks to our training as new councillors, and rezoning was something that seemed to be very complicated, and we need to be very careful about that. So I guess the general question is, have we followed the statutory process, what we're supposed to do for this rezoning?
Through you, Chair. Yes, I believe that we have followed that process. Whenever we do a rezoning, we consider the sort of impacts that may occur. I understand that through the submissions they've raised amenity impacts, height, all sorts of things. So this is why when we have proposed this rezoning as part of draft amendment C318, which implements some of the recommendations out of the Cremorne Urban Design Framework, it comes with a comprehensive suite of planning controls, such as a design and development overlay, along with some local planning policy and other sort of changes. So the DDO which applies to this area, which is DDO 53, includes provisions that relate to the interface with the residential areas. The design objective within that, because the current use is a warehouse and it's most likely that the site would develop as an office, which is quite common in Cremorne, the commercial 2 zone is appropriate, but we've also then included other things to also manage what change may occur.
Councillor Davies first, then Councillor Wade, then Councillor Gomez.
Thanks. Is there, we had an experience up on Swan Street in the last PDC where we had an office complex which was change of use to residential with mixed retail at the front. Is there any situation where this would occur, or could it be a different zone that we could shift this to instead of being commercial 2? Can we make this, could we request the department that it be converted to mixed use? Because obviously we have a housing crisis.
I guess we can request, through you, Chair, we can request anything, but state policy sort of identifies Cremorne as a major employment precinct, which the zoning of commercial 2 should be retained. A part of the reason why Cremorne has been so successful as a sort of an enterprise precinct is because of that commercial 2 zone. One of the benefits with the commercial 2 zone is that if you're not within 30 metres of a residential area, notice and review rights are less than if you are closer to a residential area, because I guess the impact isn't as significant. Because the site is so long, if we were to request a rezoning to a mixed-use zone, which is a residential zone, what we're doing is introducing a residential zone much deeper into that precinct. So businesses, for example, who want to either apply for a permit for a number of things would then have to, put on notice their planning permit, which can, again, delay timeframes. So again, what we're trying to do within Cremorne is support businesses. The commercial 2 zone allows for that. And because it's been identified as a regionally significant enterprise precinct, it's probably recommended that the commercial 2 zone is the most appropriate.
Councillor Wade.
Yes, I was just wondering, this application's obviously to DTP, not to us. Was it brought under the DFP, the Development Fast Track Program, or...? Yes, okay, I'm getting nods.
Oh, through you, Chair, yes. It is a bit of an odd one, because it would normally go through the Development Facilitation Program team, but because of they can't progress with this permit until they've done the rezoning, so it's a bit of a mix.
Yes, my follow-up question, sorry, is the DFP program, I'd kind of understood it, and I'm guessing I was naive and incorrect, that it was to facilitate fast-tracking housing because of the housing crisis. But this is obviously not housing. So the DFP, what is the scope of that? Can anything come under that and council be avoided?
Through you, Chair. Correct me if I'm wrong here. There is the affordable housing component, but then there's also the significant economic benefits side of things. So there's a range of uses where the DFP team can progress planning applications, but there is conditions with that. In Cremorne, we're seeing offices. There has to be a certain, I guess, floor space that they have to propose. So smaller office developments would still come through council, but large scale, and again, this site is probably one of the biggest within Cremorne, kind of meets that criteria for them to consider it.
I want to ask a question myself. So this, as has been indicated, it's a development facilitation program pathway application. How many objections to this have been received? And I guess I also wanted to ask whether there is a distinction between objections to the rezoning versus the planning application, because these are obviously actually two separate things.
Through you, Chair, today we've been advised that 62 submissions have been made, and it's combined on the rezoning as well as the development proposal itself.
Okay, and a follow-up question. How much notice did the occupants or the owners of these properties get in relation to the rezoning and the application?
Through you, Chair. I believe they were given a month's notice in August and September from the Department of Transport and Planning, DFP.
Okay, and one more follow-up question. The copies of those objections or submissions, when did council officers receive them?
Objections. As some of you may be aware, we went on public consultation for the revised Cremorne UDF. So we have received some submissions through that process, which have raised the rezoning and this planning permit. But no, we don't have access to those objections through the August-September consultation run by DTP.
Okay, thank you. So do we have further questions? Councillor Davies.
If we were to reject the change to the planning scheme today, can you outline what the steps would be if we said A, if we kept it as it is, or B, determined that we would want to do it with a different zoning, for instance, mixed use or residential, the whole thing? What would be the process?
Through you, Chair. Thinking about this, if we didn't have this C33 Yarra amendment going through and it was going through this Cremorne UDF C318, now that we've completed exhibition, the next step would be for officers to bring a report to council that would consider submissions and provide a response. Councillors would then be given an opportunity at that meeting to sort of change the position of that amendment there. Highly likely that it would be referred to a hearing after that, so we would have a preferred position that we would take to that hearing, and we would then say, we don't think that's the right zone for that site. We would kind of argue that at the hearing. Once we'd get the report from the Planning Panels Victoria, we would take a subsequent report to council. Depending if they've discussed it, we would then sort of adopt a final position, which we would then refer to the Minister. Because it's been, this draft amendment's been run through the Standing Advisory Committee for the Yarra Activity Centres, the Minister for Planning sort of prepares and approves the amendment rather than council, but on the basis that we've done all the sort of public consultation prior to it. What we possibly could do in the context of C333 is to recommend that the department not rezone as part of their consideration of this permit. Dependent upon what they decide, would then determine maybe our approach when we consider submissions later next year.
Councillor Gomez.
So I'm just getting a little bit confused. I've just got a question for governance. Are we voting for both together, or are we voting for the rezoning, and then we're voting to agree what our view is about the DFP permit application?
Through you, Chair. Councillor Gomez, we haven't got anything that's been moved or seconded, so... So I can't tell you.
Mary, could you speak on this?
Through you, Chair, just to add a point of clarification, through the Cremorne UDF amendment that has just recently completed or ceased notification, the council position was to include the correction of this zoning in the land. So if there was a vote to not support the rezoning, that would be a vote against a council resolution that currently is already in play. Just to add that into the mix for the conversation. Thank you.
Are there any further questions?
When was that council resolution, please? To Mary.
Through you, Chair, I might have to divert the question to the Officer Kyle about when council resolved on the Cremorne UDF and the amendment.
Through you, Chair. Quite some time ago, September 2023 is when council resolved to progress consultation on the Cremorne UDF and draft amendment C318.
Any further questions? Okay, so now before me I have two motions requested by councillors, one of which is a refusal. So I'm going to deal with that first. So Councillor Davies, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'd just like to add a change to this, just proper community consultation, and it is impacting the local community. So if I could just change my amendment on that first one, because I don't wish to support the C33 amendment after what I've heard from officers today, and thank you for doing all that. It was great information. So if you could say, I reject the changes to the Yarra planning scheme.
You change it to not support.
To not support it, yep. What? If you like, I can allow everybody here to vote on the two parts if they want, if we can do it in a two-part.
So just a correction,
Can you delete it? Can you delete "are supported" at the end of the sentence, please, Pat?
Have you got a seconder for that motion?
I'll second it for the purpose of discussion.
Okay, Councillor Gomez is seconding. So Councillor Davies, do you wish to speak to that?
Sure. As we've heard tonight, I think it's very clear, and thanks officers for the report, because it was really well detailed, I've got to say. It's a difficult subject. We've got the UDF in play, we've got previous commitments that you've heard about, and also we may have a different way forward. What we have, though, is a state government that's talking out of both sides of its mouth. It's saying on one side, we've got this housing crisis, self-made or not, and on the other side, tonight, we've got a set of officers that are imposing on residential areas and removing a residential zone. It's extraordinary to be sitting here with over 60 objections in the community area, which is a highly residential area, and even though the overlooking is outside the scheme's space, the school is only 24 metres away. So people in that upper level are going to be looking down on a primary school. It's just not appropriate. The second part is it's also not compliant with the DDO. It is higher. It's imposing some 7 stories into the residents of Richmond, not Cremorne, Richmond. I know it's part of the Cremorne under a technical term, but it's actually Richmond. And when we look at other planning decisions, We are taking great care to make sure that the local residents aren't impacted throughout Yarra, and we should be consistent with that. We've also seen that the Swan Street PDC meeting that we had last PDC, the Swan Street offices changing to residential because it couldn't make the correct business model. The business model for offices wasn't viable. We've got Cremorne, which is full of empty offices. I'll happily take you down there with my daughter and walk you around the empty streets of Cremorne, and yet here we have a set of offices that are unwelcome by the residents being impacted. I believe that we need to reject this and take a different pathway to support the local residents of Yarra and, in this case, Richmond, review the choices that were made in the past about the UDF, change those when it comes to Brighton Street, which has been impacted continuously coming back to these PDCs with various developments coming in. Our residents are being impacted by the poor decisions of the past. We need to adjust them, and we need to, as you'll see, we'll contemplate another PDC submission this evening down in Cremorne, which I will be supporting because it is in the correct area and it won't be imposing itself on residents. But this one is, and it should not be supported for that very reason. And we stop just having to treat Richmond like it's just got to take it because we're the ones to take the hit. We have to stand shoulder to shoulder with our community members wherever they are. And that's what we should be doing tonight, and we should be challenging the decisions of the past and challenging this state government who is not addressing housing correctly and is imposing itself on the local community with a lack of transparency and notification and allowing people to just jump the queue over the top of community and just take control of our residential streets. It's unacceptable, and I would appreciate your support tonight with this refusal.
Okay, now just one small thing. Thank you for that. If you could direct to the chair, that would be great, because I think the officers, it's actually to be directed to the chair. That's okay. I know. But yeah, thank you. Okay, so please, motion.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't let you speak either.
Yeah, sorry, there might be others that may want to.
Sorry. Yes, you're going to speak. Sorry.
Thank you. Look, I appreciate everything that has just been put forward by Councillor Davies, but I'm going to speak against and foreshadow that if this motion lapses, that I will have an alternative motion that looks to support the officer recommendations along with several other amendments. The officer recommendations, along with the further amendments, bring it into alignment with the urban design framework and the associated DDO. It's taken years to get to this point after many years of engagement with community and the state government. I do hear the concerns raised by Councillor Davies about trying to get more housing in. The state government have been abundantly clear to us several times over that they don't support residential in this area. I'm very happy to explore that at a further occasion, but we have to assess the application that's in front of us now, noting we're a referral authority effectively and not the decision maker in this. So we can either give the state government direction in terms of what we think would be good amendments to bring it into greater alignment with what council has agreed is an agreeable position when it's engaged with community, or we could refuse and we lose the opportunity to provide any amendments, which means the state government is unlikely to take any changes on board because we wouldn't be providing them. So to my colleagues, there is another motion coming should this one lapse. Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak to this? Look, I might just say something. Like Councillor Davies, I'm concerned about the interface between commercial and residential properties. I am regularly down in that area as a Richmond local. I know that there's a lot of low-rise housing, single-storey dwellings in that area, and I think time and again we have had planning applications where we are struggling with this interface between commercial and residential zoning, and I'm really mindful of the impacts that these developments, where we're on, you know, the two uses of each other, how we can manage that. And I'm not sure that rezoning that land as commercial is going to be very helpful when the people in the area around Brighton Street have very real problems with the development that's encroaching and the uses that are happening there. So I think I'm of the view that we need to manage these well, and simply rezoning an area and having quite very high building heights right up into low-rise residential areas that have heritage overlays as well, I believe in many instances, concerns me. And so that's my position on this. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Yes, sorry.
Thank you. I guess I would first start by saying, as my question probably revealed, I'm quite frustrated that the DFP program, fast track program, is being used for things like this. Like, this seems to me, it's an office development, it's not urgent in the same way that I think housing is, and it would be nice if proper council processes could be followed so that we could do our job properly and hear from the community properly. As obviously, I think it's been very clearly demonstrated tonight, the Department of Transport has not allowed us to do. So I'll start by saying the DFP process is bad generally, and particularly in circumstances with office buildings like this one. That said, I firstly agree with what my colleague Councillor Crossland said, which is, if we're not the decision maker in this, I want to put forward something that is going to say how they should do it better so that they do it better, rather than outright refusing it, where I think there is a good chance they will just put it up exactly as they've put it to us, which is problematic. I'd much prefer the better version, that our officers could work with them to make it better. And secondly, I think overturning zoning policy on the fly drafted in the room is just iffy and could lead to problems down the track, and I don't like it from a governance point of view, especially when the community has been so heavily involved in the UDF. Overturning that in this kind of setting, I think, with literally no submitters, is a quite bold move. So I will be voting against and voting for my colleague Councillor Crossland's motion if he gets to put it up.
Okay, does anyone else want to speak? Councillor Gomez.
So I supported Councillor Davies to have a discussion on this issue.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Hasn't Councillor Gomez spoken? Sorry, Councillor Gomez.
No.
So again, I supported Councillor Davies' ability to discuss this issue. I'm of the view that we are correcting an anomaly in the playing scheme. So that's the position I'm taking. I'm still open to be convinced about the actual proposal for the site, not the rezoning, the actual development proposal. So I'm just flagging to everyone that I wish I can, I guess, vote separately about supporting change, supporting the rezoning, and stay open to a question on whether we support the development. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, let's put the motion. All those in favour of Councillor Davies' motion? Okay, so Councillor Davies, Councillor Ho, Councillor Harrison. All those against? So we've got Councillor Gomez, Councillor Crossland, Councillor Wade, Councillor Aston. That is lost. So if officers could now explain the next steps. Oh, sorry. Okay, so Councillor Crossland's alternate motion.
Thank you. I'll briefly speak to what it is. It's in support of the officer recommendations with several amendments to that, including stairwells on the north and south boundaries to have external glazing from levels 2 and upwards, stairwells to be accommodated in an unenclosed manner to common areas, that exposed concrete walls on levels 2 and along the southern elevation to be provided with greater material articulation, provision of planters and or other vertical greenery on level 2 and other floors up on the south and east elevations, and with greater provision along the length of the Northcote Street and Church Street elevations, that all bicycle parking space and at least 50% of employee bicycle parking spaces be provided at level. So that means you've got 2 wheels on the ground, provision for parking of cargo bikes and bikes with trailers, and improving the end of trip access arrangements. So you actually have room to travel down there, 2 people passing each other. Right now it's incredibly narrow. And that includes the corridor that connects through to Church Street, which is accessible via the office lobby.
Okay, so you've just described the alternate motion. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Wade. Okay. Councillor Croston, did you want to speak to your motion?
Just super briefly, we've just touched on it before with the other motion. We've got this opportunity in front of us right now where officers have made recommendations about the position council would have if it was the decision-making authority. We are not. We are providing our recommendations to the state who will make a decision. The recommendations have been provided, coupled with the amendments I've put forward, bring it into greater alignment with the urban design framework and the associated DDO. It brings it into greater alignment with what community has been asking for over the last several years. Yes, I would be keen to look at how we could get more housing in this area. That's not on the table right now, and it's not the decision we get to make. So I'm keen for us to put forward the best possible proposal at this point in time in terms of the advice that we can give to make sure we're getting the best we can for our community on this opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wade, did you wish to speak?
Just to thank officers for, again, reviewing an application that hasn't actually come to us and for giving your recommendations, which I think would make the development much better. So thank you for that.
Okay, did anyone else? Councillor Gomez.
So I guess I'm foreshadowing or following whatever I said before. Essentially, I can't support this motion because we're combining the two things together. I agree with what Councillor Wade had said before, that these fast-track processes should be aimed at housing, not commercial properties. I think we should address that separately. I would like to see the anomaly fixed, but I don't support the actual development. But I'm not sure how I can do that in this proposal. So I'm foreshadowing that I won't be supporting it for that reason.
Okay, did anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Aston.
I'm going to vote for this amendment from Councillor Crossland. Simply has a chance of being heard by the state government than simply just saying we've got nothing to offer you, knowing that in all likelihood this will go ahead. That is just the reality of the way these things are done at this point in time. So I take into account Councillor Gomez's concerns about the two things being bundled up and essentially voting on these two things together. But given the situation that we're in, I think it is better to put something forward that in all likelihood is going to go ahead if, you know, the conditions for development are there. And I think the officers have done a good job in coming forward with something that seeks to create a building that is still imposing, absolutely, in this partly residential area, but less imposing than it would have been otherwise.
Does anyone else want to speak? Councillor Davey.
Yeah, I think let's have a look at the reality of what's going to happen here. We've got 450 cars coming into Richmond once this is built, and we've got offices, when we've got half of Cremorne empty, for empty offices, we've got offices right next to residential areas, which the community is not asking for, with the greatest respect to Councillor Crossland. I would really question any Richmond resident who is asking for this kind of development. I would just, with the greatest respect, what we need here is build to own residents in low to medium rise, 3 to 4 story, residential, people who want to invest in Richmond, people who want to live in Richmond, community members, not a gigantic office that's imposing itself on the residents south of that, which are probably going to sit in its shadow for the rest of their days. I can't support this. It's not community-based, this decision. And with the greatest respect to all the other councillors who are voting in favour of it, just giving in to the state government is not what we're here to do. We're here to send a message to the state government, like the community members of here who come in from North Fitzroy do every time, and they do a fantastic job. They send a message to us, and we need to send that message to the state government. Deliver on your housing crisis problem. Deliver residential houses that are well designed, low level, 3 to 4 story at most, and allow people to invest in our local community. That's the message we need to be sending to the state government, not just giving in, not just bending over, not just falling backwards. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to support our community. We can put these kinds of offices up in Cremorne. There's tons of room down there. It's all commercial. Go for it. Go have a circus down in Cremorne in terms of certain areas. Obviously not where the residential areas are, but why aren't we pushing for this kind of development like the one coming this evening down in Cremorne in highly commercial, non-residential areas? This isn't something our community wants in Richmond. The 3 Richmond councillors have already put their hand up on the previous one to reject it. I'd respectfully ask that you reverse your position on it and don't accept these conditions set out by the state government.
Okay. Did anyone else want to speak to this? Okay, they don't get to speak at this point. I have to say I agree in many respects with what Councillor Aston and Councillor Wade have said around putting something forward to the Department of Transport and Planning, or the Minister who will be the ultimate decision maker on this application. I really struggle because I don't approve of this at all, and also I think, as Councillor Gomez has highlighted here, I'm very troubled by getting these two decisions effectively in one motion, the rezoning and the application together. I'm also very, very troubled by the timelines of this application. We barely got any notice. The officers have done a tremendous job in assessing these applications under what is very, very trying circumstances. The councillors themselves have had very limited opportunity. We're here with 5 items on the agenda tonight trying to make good decisions, and that is not being facilitated here with these development facilitation program pathway applications at all. Now, we have already passed a notice of motion at the August council meeting raising very, very serious concerns about how these development facilitation program pathway applications are being handled. All of the feedback about us wanting to work rushed development facilitation program applications. So I have to put that out as strongly as I can. We had no people here submitting in relation to this application. Neither the applicant bothered to attend. They probably knew that this was on, but with regards to the residents, they probably didn't. The timelines have been so rushed in relation to this that we haven't been able to review. I don't think any of us councillors have had an opportunity to review the feedback that was actually provided to the Department of Transport and Planning in relation to this. We received it late this afternoon. I certainly didn't have time to review it, and I doubt that anyone else did either. I'm very, very troubled is what I have to say here. I regrettably am going to vote in favour of Councillor Crossland's motion, no disrespect to him, but simply because we have got to put something forward that might ameliorate what is proposed here. So that's my position here tonight. I don't want to vote in favour of this, but I feel that my hands are literally tied behind my back on this. So I will put the motion. Everybody in favour, please put your hand up. Councillor Aston, Councillor Wade, Councillor Cosson and Councillor Harrison in favour. Those who are against, Councillor Davies, Councillor Gomez and Councillor Ho. That is 1. I think we want, I'll just hear from the officers in relation to the next steps, and then we're going to have a break after this item for a couple of minutes. Thanks.
Through you, Chair. The next steps will be that we would write to the Department of Transport and Planning of the outcome of this meeting. Something that we have noted to councillors earlier today is the submissions that we received through C318 Yarra that relate to this site. We will also forward to the Department for Transport and Planning as well.
Okay, thank you. So we'll break, and then we have 2 more applications after that. Thank you. If we could make a start again, please. Okay, so the next agenda item is 201 to 215 Queen's Parade and 6 to 12 Dummett Crescent Fitzroy North. We have no submissions on behalf of the applicant, and we have 3 registered submitters speaking. So can I call up Margaret Godding? Is Margaret here? Perfect. Okay, so just check on...
Councillors and Madam Chairman for allowing me to speak. I'm speaking partly as my membership of a local residents group called Save Queen's Parade. Since 2018, we've been focused particularly on the far end of Queen's Parade, which has been referred to as Precinct 5. It's that triangle at the end of Queen's Parade. We do recognise that this precinct is more suited to high-rise development than other parts of Queen's Parade, but we've advocated for limits on height and also for appropriate design. So we've been involved in a number of submissions to VCAT in relation to this area, including for the current site, the former Clifton Motors Garage. We were successful with Council at a VCAT mediation hearing in relation to another application in being able to reduce a proposal for a 17-storey building down to 14 storeys. So at present, we've got a 14-storey building stepping down to a 12-storey building, stepping down to a 10-storey building. In relation to the panel hearing for C231, we advocated for the principle of step transition from higher form at the far end, 5C, which is near to Hoddle Street, down to the area 5A, which is the McDonald's restaurant site. We believe that the proposed 12-storey height of the building at the rear of the former Clifton Motors Garage site doesn't adhere to that principle of stepping down and will inappropriately dominate this historic buildings, actually. We should recognise that these buildings are a unique example of Art Deco architecture. They are heritage listed. We have a lot of excellent Victorian architecture in our area, but we have very little Art Deco architecture. We do want to preserve it, and we do want to preserve it so that people can come to this area and admire it, which they do now. So we also, just from living in this area, are already dominated by massive buildings up behind us on the skyline. We really don't want another one adding to that bulk, so stepping down is very, very important. We have overlooking and lights coming through into Rushall Crescent and McKean Street, but also this proposal for the building at the rear of the Clifton Motors Garage site will loom over the recreation area behind. I'll just briefly mention as well the Dummett Crescent issue. We absolutely support the councillor's recommendation about the need for setbacks of 1.5 metres onto this lane. This area is an important walkway with access going from North Fitzroy through to the recreation area with the Collingwood Leisure Centre, the tennis courts and other areas in Clifton Hill. So we would very much urge you to support the council officer's view that plans for this development should be rejected and that changes should be made before the development goes ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next registered submitter is Anne Coveney from Protect Fitzroy North Incorporated.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, councillors, for this opportunity to speak. Yes, I'm Anne Coveney. I'm representing Protect Fitzroy North. I'm secretary, and that's my the reason I'm allowed to speak on this. And we have voted, and the committee's approved that essentially PFN, VCAT or anything else, but we 100% support the really detailed, thorough officers' recommendations. So this is not a site where the planning is in doubt. Kathy Mitchell, the head of Planning Vandals Victoria, chaired the panel which reviewed Queen's Parade, including this site. So there was, for weeks, the panel deliberated. They produced a panel report which has got extensive guidance on urban planning, ESD, where the traffic should be done, exactly all the built form heights, because it's a DDO, and it speaks to what's needed to respect the heritage. It includes urban design guidelines for exactly how the setbacks should be placed at what heights. So, and this DDO 16 is in the planning scheme. It's approved by state planning. This is not an area for, this is not an area for any level of doubt as to exactly what should be in that, for that section of Queen's Parade. So the proposal needed to do four things. It needed to respect the heritage, state significant heritage. It needed to fulfil the urban design requirements that were detailed in both the panel report and the DDO. It needed to look after the people that are going to be in there, so it needed to meet the ESD requirements. It needs to do things like make sure there's sunlight into the apartments. And the fourth thing it needed to do was to make sure Dummett Crescent fulfilled its very important role as a transport corridor between the Clifton Hill bus and tram interchange and the underpass to get to Clifton Hill Station. So this was, again, covered thoroughly in the panel report, but has not been reflected whatsoever in the plans. Council officers have picked all this up. The ESD, the sunlight, there is no ESD, and the previous set of plans for this site highlighted the fact that the lower levels were not going to have enough sunlight. Again, the lower levels are highly unlikely to not have enough sunlight. The urban design, it doesn't meet any of the urban design requirements for respecting the other people who have built in that precinct who have respected the DDO, who have complied with the flow of buildings down towards the former Union Hotel, current McDonald's. So one of the principles of orderly planning is that you don't stick a building that doesn't fit in with the pattern of the others, because that lets down, it degrades the quality of the area, and this is a very prominent site. You've got 60-metre wide roads, so everything is very visible. So these plans, fails on, they've got a 12-storey building sticking up above the building to the north, so that is clearly against the flow. They haven't respected the heritage, they haven't respected the ESD, they haven't respected Dummett Crescent. They've proposed it's not wide enough, they've got these concrete poles, so it's going to create periods of low visibility, of shade. They've not respected the urban design and the keeping quality design in the area so that the remaining sites are also encouraged to have good quality buildings built according to the DDO, to realise the plans that were laid out in the panel reports. So, yes, and by not having, respecting the need for a solid pedestrian connection between the underpass and the train and tram interchange, it compromises. As part, again, it came out in the panel report, hundreds of people use that path every day to go to and from. Thank you very much, and I'll leave you in peace.
Thank you. And the final submitter on this item is Anne Horrigan-Dixon.
I only decided last night about 6:25 that I needed to come and speak to this, seeing that Queen's Parade's been a major part of the lives of people in North Fitzroy since 2016. Firstly, I would like to commend the officer and the planning department for the amazing work that they've done on this report. I also support more housing, and I want the changes to the development recommended by the council officer to be recommended to go to the department. DDO 16 probably means nothing to you people because you weren't here in 2016 to 2019. So I'm just going to give you a very, very brief history lesson about why North Fitzroy is so obsessed with planning. You can go to the dog park and you can talk to anybody and they can talk about planning, because we've had Peter Monty's development, we've had the Queen's Parade, which was a real crisis in our community. In 2016, Tim Gurner decided to build 4 16-storey towers, 26 to 56 Queen's Parade. It shocked everybody. The council, Richard Wynne, who was the planning officer, but the community were really, really engaged, and Protect North Fitzroy as an organisation was formed. Almost every house in North Fitzroy had a sign out the front of their house that said it's too big. Then what was going to happen? When the new council was elected in 2016, the first council meeting was held at the community room in the Edinburgh Gardens. 350 people attended. The meeting occurred in that building because nobody knew what to do. It was a real mess. Then, during that period of time, up until submissions were made to council, the community and the council started to work very closely together in 2019 on this amendment, C231. When the council put out their recommendations, there was another big shock, because in our shopping centre, our heritage shopping centre, it was recommended to be 6 storeys high with 6 metre setbacks above heritage buildings in that area. A couple of other facts. Queen's Parade is one of Robert Hoddle's grand Melbourne boulevards. It is highly regarded, and the buildings along there, it transitions. There's 5 precincts. Each is slightly different, but each has something very special in it. Now I've got to find my spot. During this period of time, the community was very engaged with this, and when we went to the planning panel with Cathy Mitchell at the end of 2019, we actually were commended as a community for turning up with so many people every day and so many people making actual submissions to this very complex planning amendment. And at the end, we had a fantastic working relationship with strategic planning, and we got a really great outcome, which is a gold standard outcome. So the former Clifton Hill Motors, nobody has said this, but I will say it, it was designed by Wardrop, who designed the shrine. It's an outstanding building. It has been well documented in the planning scheme, and we have to ensure that it's looked after. There is a Heritage Victoria permit, and I read it carefully, and I read it with Mr. A. Tonkin, who was the CEO at Heritage Victoria. It is for 4 storeys, not 5 storeys. The only people that can amend that is Heritage Victoria, and I'm urging the council officers and the councillors to make sure that we keep the pressure on Heritage Victoria to meet those permits and or inform us if there are going to be changes, because we can put pressure on Heritage Victoria. So I support the recommendation, and I really, really want to thank the council officers who have put so much work into this in such a short time. You've done an outstanding job. And North Fitzroy people will keep turning up because we are always in a crisis up there. Things happen to us and we just have to respond. Thank you.
Okay, so
through you, Chair. The application is for a Part 5 and Part 12-storey apartment development, including affordable housing, with commercial tenancies at ground level at numbers 201, 215 Queen's Parade and 6 to 12 Dunham Crescent in Fitzroy North. This application is currently being considered by the Department of Transport and Planning and was made to the Minister under Clause 5323, which is for significant residential development with affordable housing. The subject site consists of 6 parcels and located in a mixed-use zone, design and development overlay, Schedule 16, Precinct 5, environmental audit overlay, development contribution plan overlay, and has varied heritage significances throughout the varied sites. Planning officers have recommended refusal of this application. Thank you.
thank you. Do we have any questions of the officers? Councillor Gomez.
Can I just explore a couple of points? One is the issue of affordable housing. My understanding, and I'm just a dumb councillor here, is that the applicant is taking this through the process by which if they're offering, I think, 10% affordable housing, they can apply for to bypass council and go straight to the planning minister for a decision. Is this correct?
Through you, Chair, yes, that is correct. And they do meet the threshold where the development exceeds $50 million.
Yep.
That's 61,885.
Yep. As a follow-up then, but as far as I understand it, ultimately they don't necessarily have to build that affordable housing, do they? They can make an alternative contribution to meet those requirements.
The planning scheme does allow either 10% or provide a contribution, which is conditioned if this were to be supported. There is a condition.
Okay.
Any further questions from the officers? No? Okay, so do we have a way forward? I note that before me I have 2 motions here, one from Councillor Gomez and one from Councillor Crossland. It looks to me like they're not incompatible, so can these be...
I'm open to combining them.
Okay, perfect. So perhaps you speak to what's contained in the alternate motion. All right, so just can we propose, who's the seconder here? Do you want a second as the author of the alternate? Okay, perfect. So Councillor Gomez, your amendment, if you could describe it.
Okay, so my amendment is to essentially support the officer's recommendation. I agree with Ms. Anne Hogan-Dixon that the officer's work here is outstanding. I think we should support it. I think the officers have basically understood the grand bargain that was made all those years ago between the planning minister and council and the residents to put a DDO there. So I've asked for the officer's recommendation to be supported, but I've also asked for greater clarity around the Heritage Victoria interaction with the site, just to make sure that the permits are there that are required in order to build this development, but protecting the heritage that's already there. Thank you.
And Councillor Crossland, do you want to describe your alternate motions?
Thank you. Just briefly, there's some of the things that we've heard tonight with some of the other matters that have been before us. It's stairwells to be unenclosed to common areas. Just to really incentivise people to use them more, and it's also based on crime prevention through environmental design principles. All bicycle parking to be provided at ground level, provision of bicycle spaces for cargo bikes and bikes with trailers, making sure that there is DDA compliant access to communal areas at level 1, and installing bollards at the central stairwell entrance at all basement levels to make sure there's that safety for people exiting there, and making sure that there is DDA compliant access from the disabled parking bay in basement level 1 to the central lift core. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Gomez, do you want to speak to your motion?
So I guess I mentioned the word, I used the words grand bargain. Back in the day, we called it the dumbbell, or I think it was called the dumbbell kind of agreement, which is we were to protect the historic heritage fabric of the shopping strip along Queen's Parade, but in return, as rightly we should, to support what is now a housing crisis, but a need for more housing, was to support development at both ends. And we've already had the discussion around the gasworks end and the 1,000-odd apartments that are coming up there. And this is the other side of that dumbbell, which is what we call the area behind McDonald's. So I thank the officers very much to basically remind us all what that grand bargain was, that ultimately resulted under the Amendment 231 in DDO 16. And it set basically some preferred heights that we should all respect, as well as protecting that interface, or that laneway that connects effectively the Clifton Hill railway station with the other side of the development and Queen's Parade. And during the planning panel, that was dealt with very carefully to make sure that the activation of that site for pedestrians and cyclists and users would be enhanced by that. So that is part of the officer recommendation. I support that. And like I said, just having a little more clarity to make sure that Heritage Victoria are clear in what they are protecting with the old Clifton Motors site as this development occurs. I endorse this motion to my fellow councillors.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Crossland, do you want to speak to the motion?
Just very briefly, first, thank you to Councillor Gomez for accepting the amendments as put. I think these, combined with the proposed conditions by officers who have done a really rigorous report, give a really rounded position for the state to consider. I appreciate everyone that's made submission this evening and taken the time through the process over the last many, many years to getting us to this point as well. Overall, with these changes taken on board, I think this could be a really good outcome for this location, and I am hopeful for a good outcome for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to speak? Councillor Wade.
Just to say thank you for sticking up for Dummett Crescent as a fellow pedestrian on that space. It's nice to see the support.
Anybody else? I'll just acknowledge that quite clearly, and I'm not particularly familiar with this area, but it's very, very clear that the community and council have worked together very closely over many years to get to the point with the DDO, and it would be very regretful for that to be undermined by supporting an application like this. I think that so much work has gone into it, and we have to work to protect that. So I will put the motion. All those in favour? Okay, so we've got Councillor Davies, Councillor Gomez, Councillor Ho, Councillor Harrison, Councillor Crossland, Councillor Wade, and those against... Oh, sorry, Councillor Aston, are you in favour or... You are in favour. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you. It's getting late. Okay, so if we could just hear the way forward with this application, please.
Planning officers will send out a letter to the department outlining council's position of refusal.
Thank you. So that concludes that item. We then have one more item to go this evening, which is the late report for 28 to 30 Stevenson Street, Cremorne. Now, looking at this, we don't have any registered submitters, neither the applicant or... Yes. Maybe we'll just start. So, councillors, given that we have no submitters on either side tonight, do you wish for a brief report from the officers?
Through you, Chair. The report provides Council with an assessment of a planning application. Sorry, just bear with me for a moment. Oh, what's happened? Okay, so... Oh. Sorry, my computer decides to just play out. So the report provides Council with an assessment of a planning application to be considered by the Department of Transport and Planning for a planning permit for the construction of a 13-storey office development at 28 to 30 Stephenson Street. Essentially, the development... Sorry, everything's just gone... Sorry, I apologise about... This has just gone really funny. It's all good. Okay, so the application was made to the Minister for Planning under clause 53.22 of the scheme, which relates to significant economic development. In brief, the application proposed the development of the site with a 13-storey office building, use of the land for a food and drink premises, restricted recreation facility and waste-to-energy facility, which is the anaerobic digester, including a reduction in the car parking requirements in the bicycle facilities. A separate planning application for the site was approved back in October of 2022 for the construction of a 10-storey office development on that same site. I do note that that permit expired in October, but the permit holder, is well within the timeline to extend the life of that permit. They have up to 6 months to do so. So therefore, they do have the opportunity to extend the life of that permit. The current design at 13 storeys has not been supported by council officers, and they're providing an alternate recommendation with conditions to reduce the overall building height down to 10 storeys to bring it in line with the previous scheme that was supported by council officers. The officer report provides a suite of conditions that relate to improving the design of the building and speak to various aspects of it, and that's reiterated within the officer report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions? Councillor Davies.
Thanks for the report. Just in terms of the community's eyes and ears on this, can you talk to the process that's led us here? Obviously, it wasn't published with the other PDC items. If you could just talk to that.
Through you, Chair. We've been aware of the application, and the planning officer was trying to write a report very quickly and noted there were a number of issues. We still hadn't received the documentation, and they were still finalising, and we were only received final plans on Wednesday last week. So we've generally been trying to write a report to come to council. That is now on advertising. It was on notification as of Thursday last week. There were signs that were gone up, and there have been letters that are being sent out. But that advertising won't finish for another couple of weeks. Thank you.
So just for clarity, and I can feel your pain, But just for clarity, it's still in the advertising period, but we're asked to vote on it tonight. Can you talk to the reason why we need to vote on it tonight and why not another time?
Through you, Chair. We have got a very clear indication from the department that they will be requiring a decision from council. We don't have any council meetings in January, so it is imperative that a decision's made to at least put a position to the department as the only available meeting that we have.
I've got a question to follow up on what Councillor Davies has been asking. So we don't have any submitters here tonight for this application. I note that you've said that it only went up on notice on Thursday last week. You yourselves only received the final documents on Wednesday, leaving you all of 2 days to finalise your report. So thank you for turning that around so promptly. But can we have any, unless they saw signage on the street, they potentially are completely unaware of this application, and I almost certainly do not know that there's a planning decisions committee this evening dealing with this application?
Thank you, Chair. The letters will have gone out. I couldn't tell you whether they've been delivered or not to people, so they may not be aware of it, but they will soon have those and they will be able to write submissions to the department.
Do we have any indicative time frame about when the department will be making a decision on this application, given that they've indicated that they are not waiting for us, as it were?
Thank you, Chair. We've been given an indication that there is a lot of pressure being put on the department to get decisions out. We've been advised that they're looking at getting decisions by mid-January.
Okay, so it's very clear we've had 4 development facilitation program pathway applications before us this evening. I know that others are also in train, although we might not be looking at them until January. I guess I'm sort of wondering about, essentially you guys have had to work very hard to provide feedback, local feedback about these applications. I feel like there's maybe a concern about the turnaround times and how we can deal with that, given, and I absolutely applaud the work that you guys have done in turning these reports around so promptly. I guess what I'm getting at is whether you guys have even had time to actually thoroughly review. And I note with this particular application, for example, that you've indicated that a wind and acoustic report are recommended, and that's not something that Council is doing, but that it is recommending that the Department of Transport and Planning commission those reports. Is there any requirement on the department to undertake that work, given that there seems to be vast haste in getting applications approved?
Thank you, Chair. The fortunate, if you can say it's fortunate with this application, is that it is generally an application that we had seen previously that they had tried to do 13 stories for, and we said, no, there is no way we can have 10 stories. So we have already done a fair bit of that work. There is obviously a recommendation that they need to look at the acoustics and the wind impacts. That's not up for us to make those assertions. However, given our previous assessment, we think that they probably will be able to do those, mitigate those conditions. The biggest issue, or the biggest change that we have, is in relation to the uses, where they were not part of any approval. So it was purely an office building with a small food and drinks premises. Neither of those needed a permit for the use. So the biggest unknown for us is really regarding the food and drinks and the restricted recreation.
Councillor Gomez.
So I've got a general question around, in the very short space of time I've had to look at this, the noise impacts from the rooftop bar or restaurant, or whatever it is. Has anyone addressed the potential carry of the noise over the residential part of that world? I didn't see a noise report, so.
Through you, Chair, we haven't made that assessment. We have looked at the uses. We have mentioned that it is not clear what it is that the use is that they're providing. They've said it's a food and beverage, and that could be, who knows what that means. We've taken it to be a restaurant. We have another planning permit that was issued for 16 Stevenson Street, which is sort of northwest, and it has a rooftop bar. It has been given approval to operate up until 10 p.m. Up Sunday through Thursday, and then 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday. So officers have actually taken that as the similar sort of interface. There's got an elevated railway, there's other buildings, it's in a commercial zone. We've actually recommended that there's a condition that the use cease at 10 p.m. because we haven't tested anything further, or there is no evidence of any patron noise.
It's a question, or it's a question, maybe a rhetorical question. So in the very short space of time we've had to assess this, and very short space of time you've had to write this, what's the value of our input into this whole process?
Through you, Chair, I'm not sure how I'm meant to answer that question. I know that there is an obligation for council to respond to TTP referrals. Do we go beyond that by providing detailed assessments? Possibly. Not all councils go to the detail that we have elected to do so, but we do that because we want to make sure that the issues that we see arising from these applications are considered and at least a voice being given to those issues. I do acknowledge these timelines are very difficult for staff to manage, and councillors, you will see that as part of the governance report coming to you next Tuesday night, we've asked for another PDC to be set up for January because we have more of these in train. So councillors, I don't think that's an answer, but it's a response that I feel I need to give you.
Okay, Councillor Davies.
Just a quick question on the height. So you're asking to bring it down 3 stories, correct? Yep. So when I'm looking at page 51, which has got the sort of the bird's eye view down, and you can see the property marked in red key line, sort of more or less central to the photo. Have you got that up? Yep. In terms of residential premises, whether they're zoned or otherwise, but where there's residential dwellings, is it safe to say that there's none on the block that it's on up until below where you get down to 21, 23, 25? Are they residential down there? Or is there any residential in that column, that north to south column that the building's proposed for?
Through you, Chair, sorry, without sort of going into it, they do certainly appear to be residential within that 21 to 29 at the rear. It is commercial 2 zone, so they are not going to be afforded the same rights. And I'm fairly sure, and I don't know, don't quote me on it, but I'm fairly sure there's a number of multi-storey approvals that have already gone through in that street. So it's really just a matter of the uses that would then need to be considered.
Just looking over the train lines into that other block of residential which are adjacent to the park, or if you were sitting in the park, if it was 10-storey, will you be able to see the building clearly over the railway station or not?
Through you, Chair, I would say that you will see 10-storey, and obviously you'll see a lot more than with the additional levels.
But with the 13, you mean? Yep. So with the 10, it might be fair to say that it would be limited in its sort of change of the skyline, more or less?
At the moment, through you, Chair. At the moment, the approval for the 10 stories, if you were looking at it, there's the existing building on 16 Stevenson Street, which is already being built. This is a comparable height. So if you can see that 16 Stevenson Street, then you would see the approved 10 stories.
Thanks, that's it.
Are there any other questions? Okay, look, I might ask a question about waste management. You've just described to me that you're not entirely sure about what that use will be due to the lack of information, but I'm very conscious of the fact that the trucks in Cremorne, there are definitely residents who have issues around big garbage trucks on Gwyn Street, which is actually quite close to this location. How will waste management be assessed in relation to this application, given that it's...
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the waste, so the waste to energy generator is actually to use the waste that's generated on site, but it's also, they're proposing that the waste is collected from other businesses like cafes and restaurants, and they actually come in cargo bikes. So they're actually saying that cargo bikes will actually come in. They're not going to be using trucks, and they will actually come in through the vehicle entrance. They will put the waste into the chute that will actually then go into the mechanics. So they're actually not using a lot of big trucks for this one.
Right, any other questions from councillors at this point? No? Okay, do we have a way forward? Councillor Davies.
I'd like to accept the officer's recommendations, but I do note that Councillor Crossland has some amendments to that. Is that correct?
Councillor Crossland, do you want to describe your amendments, please?
Sorry, can I just check, is this Councillor Davies moving the officer recommendation with amendments, or...?
I think we need to, I think your amendments are the officer recommendation with some additional things. That's right, isn't it? Yes, so I think we put...
Sorry, I'm just checking. So what Councillor Davies is trying to do is what Councillor Gomez did before. Is that right?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Okay, so Councillor Crossland, do you want to describe your amendments?
Sure. So that there be unenclosed stairwells to common areas, no stairwell walls or doors to common areas. If that's not possible, stairwells and walls to be glazed. Provision of bollards at the stairwell and elevator entrance at basement level 1, and provision of employee bicycle parking spaces for cargo bikes and bikes with trailers.
Okay, so do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Gomez? Okay, sorry. Sorry. I don't think I have anything in front of me from Councillor Davies.
I thought it was going to be Councillor Gomez seconding it. Is that right? No.
But, sorry, I'm confused.
I think you have to ask me if I accept the amendment. Is that right?
But I only have one motion here. Is there another amendment that's been put forward? So, okay.
Councillor Davies has moved the officer recommendation.
Okay.
Councillor Crossland's got amendments.
So do you...
If Councillor Davies accepts them?
Yep. Do you want to accept Councillor Crossland's?
I accept.
Thank you. Okay. So, Councillor Davies, do you want to speak to the motion? Perfect.
No.
Yours is the officer recommendation plus the amendments. Are you happy to support?
Can I just chime in? I think what effectively is happening is Councillor Davies is moving the thing that Councillor Crossland put forward, and now Councillor Crossland is being asked to second it, just to put that in layman's terms.
I think so. Are you happy to second that? Yes, thank you. So, Councillor Davies, do you want to speak to the motion?
Sure. Okay, so if this was a proposal for south of Balmain Street or west of Cremorne Street in Cremorne, this would be an absolute black and white no, because those are residential areas and they need to be maintained and protected, much like we've heard tonight with other residential areas. However, this specific site, obviously with a history of a 10-storey, is a commercial zone that we need to look at and support. Firstly, because it reignites the private sector, the private development construction centre, and it fulfils that commercial zoning promise. The second part is, and I'm in taking on the council's recommendations, the officers, sorry, the 10-storey being an appropriate size that fits within the context of other other constructions in that area. The reason why I did ask about the playground and those areas adjacent to the commercial area is to ensure that our children, if they're out, sky and not skyscrapers. So I do agree with the officer's recommendations of 10 stories. I think it's a great opportunity to rethink and reignite the development area in Cremorne with really appropriate architecturally led construction, and I think this is a great opportunity to do that. However, the way that the state government has shoved this down with very little notification and once again just thrown it into our laps at very short notice is really unacceptable. Again, just repeating what Councillor, the Deputy Mayor said, sorry. It's been a long night. We received these details on Wednesday, December the 3rd. They're being published on Thursday, December the 4th. They're still in the advertising period, and yet we're being asked to vote on this tonight. This is unacceptable from just a pure transparency and just how do you treat your community, how do you treat your local council when you're doing this? It's just not the right way to do it. It's not the way to bring the community and the council with you, and I would call on the state government to rethink its approach in the way it's treating Richmond and Cremorne community members, and for that matter, community members in Yarra.
Okay, Councillor Crossland, did you wish to speak to this?
Just briefly, again, thank you so much to officers. I appreciate there's a lot of work went into this to rapidly review and have this come to us. I think what has been put forward, coupled with the amendments that have been made as part of this, will be the best possible position we can put forward to the state government. I had sought to go a bit harder with some of them, including building separation and additional setbacks, but given they already had a permit, I couldn't go above and beyond that because it was in accordance with the DDO. So I endorse this position to my colleagues.
Okay, does anyone else want to speak to this? I will just speak briefly to again express my great dissatisfaction. We at the process here, and I really want to acknowledge the expertise and the professionalism of the officers in dealing with these, because we are literally, having a whole series of them sort of dropped on us at very short notice. I think it's a testament to the officers' great skill, expertise, local knowledge that we are actually managing to turn around reports and look at these at the Planning Decisions Committee meeting tonight. So thank you to John and Danielle and all of the other officers who have unfortunately had these things thrust upon them at very short notice. I just really want to acknowledge that. And I just also wanted to speak to the fact that what we see here is community members who, and owners, occupiers from around this area who have effectively been entirely cut out of this process. They will not know that there's a meeting tonight. They hopefully now know about the applications themselves. I think in relation to this application, they probably thought that this was a battle that was won 2 or 3 years ago, and once again this has come back with the developer wanting to have another bite at the cherry, and really in what I consider to be an abuse of this development facilitation pathway. We have that back before us in a very rushed process, which I think has the potential to have very bad decision making happening because we are reliant on the Department of Transport and Planning, who don't have the local knowledge that our officers have to determine these applications. And I think that we should all be very, very concerned about that. So thank you again to the officers who have obviously worked probably night and day of late to turn these things around. And so I will put, if nobody else wants to speak to this, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, raise your hand. Okay, so we've got Councillor Davies, Councillor Gomez, Councillor Ho, Councillor Harrison, Councillor Crossland, Councillor Wade and Councillor Aston. That is one and it is unanimous. So thank you everyone here tonight. It has been a long meeting with many applications, and I think it's obviously been a huge amount of work for everybody all round trying to deal with this in recent days. So time for a small rest before we get on with other things.
Chair, through you, Chair. Council officers will now put the motion forward to the department. Thank you.
Okay, so it is 9:09 p.m. and I declare the meeting closed. Thanks, everyone.